Alright guys, welcome back to the Beyond the Mat podcast. It's March 30th, 2022. We're going to get into Seth Rollins shooting on AEW, Paul Heyman, a superstar who's getting ready to return from injury, and a lot more as we are getting ready for WrestleMania. Got a couple long-term ideas and some interesting questions to ask as well. We'll get into all that stuff in just a moment. Alright, so Seth Rollins, a lot of people are up in arms about him shooting on AEW and how he said things that AEW wrestlers say reek of desperation. And he was in an interview with Jimmy Traina from Sports Illustrated. And remember back in January when he was feuding with Roman Reigns, they were calling back to their time in the Shield with Dean Ambrose. And he mentioned Jon Moxley's name. Traina asked him if anybody backstage was upset about him mentioning Moxley's name. He said he didn't hear one thing about it. Everyone knows he's a part of our history. You can't do Seth and Roman without Dean or Mox or whatever you want to call him. You can't do it. To ignore that part of our history and to just try and put him aside and focus on Roman and Seth, the focus was Roman and Seth. That was the story, but he's part of that. So to just ignore that and completely pretend he didn't exist is just silly. I referred to him by the name that he prefers to go by, and that's where we were with that. I heard nothing in response to it backstage. Now recently, CM Punk and MJF had a feud where they had references to WWE and its product. To that, Seth Rollins says, to me, it's one of those things where if it's a useful thing to do, it's fine. The references you spoke of are two kind of different things. I didn't use Mox to talk down to somebody. I wasn't trying to diminish anybody's accomplishments. It wasn't like that. He's part of our story. Roman wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for him and I. The other side of the coin is the way that it can be used by those guys. They can do whatever they want. I find it very tacky and very lowbrow, personally. I think it looks and reeks of desperation, and I just don't think it's anything our television show that we need to go on there and talk down about those guys. They're doing their thing. They're doing it very well. We're very happy for them. I am, at least personally. Are they on our level? No. They've got a long way to go to catch up to us, and that's fine, and they know that. They do things differently, but for me, my perspective is it's just a little step down for us to kind of use it as an insult. That's my perspective on it, but people may not share that opinion. So tacky and low brow, he says, and I kind of agree with what he's saying. It's a little bit, underhanded to just go at the other promotion to get a cheap pop, and I don't think that anything that Seth Rollins said referring to Moxley was any kind of insult, and I don't think what he's saying here is really taking a shot at AEW. He's just saying that when we mention each other's in promos, there's no reason to put anybody down, and that's not something he's going to do, and it seems like something that happens with AEW. Got no problem with that if that's what he thinks. Stone Cold Steve Austin. A lot of us are hoping that maybe he'll have a couple more matches after this WrestleMania. But a tenured member of the writing team told Ringside News that there are no plans for Stone Cold Steve Austin after WrestleMania 38. This is supposed to be a one-time deal as of now. Obviously, anything can happen, and the WWE always has the door open for Steve Austin to return, but this is just a one-time deal. A lot of people were speculating that just because the crowd was wanting, and Roman said, I'll kick everybody's ass just like I would kick Stone Cold's ass, and I'm going to kick Brock's ass. And then Brock said, well, Stone Cold was an ass kicker, but he never kicked my ass. They thought that might have been an Easter egg that they might get a match down the road. It doesn't look like that's at least the plan right now. Those were just things that Brock and Roman said to ad-lib and play with the crowd during their promos, which I thought both were very good, but Roman really hit it with his because he took this to another level. Like I've been saying, he made it personal. He brought up the fact that he's never beaten Brock at WrestleMania before, and that it embarrassed him in front of his family, and I think all that really made it a lot more of a heated rivalry in a bigger match. Alright, so we got some news on Bayley. She's been out for about 9 months, as we know, with the torn ACL, but she's reportedly close to an in-ring return. We know that they like to do returns around WrestleMania time, the Raw after WrestleMania, SmackDown after WrestleMania. Now remember, during COVID, Bayley really carried the company as a champion. She elevated her role as a heel. And when she got hurt, she was feuding with Belair. Bayley was one of the driving forces in the women's division before getting hurt. She had developed into a top heel. She was holding on to that women's SmackDown championship, had it for over a year. She was working with Belair at the time, like I said, and Belair's now working with Lynch for their WrestleMania match. It's possible we could see Bayley interfere in this match and cost Belair the match. She could also come back after Belair wins the match and challenge her. To me, I would like to see Bayley return to SmackDown after Ronda Rousey wins against Charlotte Flair, because we all know Charlotte Flair is going to take a break. I think Ronda Rousey is going to go over at WrestleMania. It'd be nice to see Bayley come back and feud against Rousey and take the belt from her, because I think Rousey's been a mistake. I think they brought her back for the star power, and at first they thought it was a good idea, and then she just totally fell flat. I don't even think she wants to do it anymore, and I think that it would do them good to back away from this plan regardless of how deep they're into it, because to me it's just not working. But the good news is we are looking at a return for Bayley within the next couple weeks. She's been cleared to return. If she goes to Raw, she'll probably revisit Bianca Belair, but I'd like to see her on SmackDown and see her as the champion there, and maybe dethrone Rousey if she is the winner at WrestleMania. So we heard about Shane McMahon today. He's going to be present at WrestleMania for the event, but not scheduled to appear. I don't think this is a story at all. I think it's much to do about nothing. I think his father owns the WWE. I think he wants to be there for the biggest show of the year, and he's welcome to be there. He wasn't fired from the WWE back in January after the Royal Rumble, after he messed up the booking and didn't know what he was doing and pissed everybody off. He was just sent home, and some of his privileges probably taken away for now. He'll get his privileges back someday. He wasn't fired, like I said. People speculate that Rollins was going to be facing him, or that he's the one facing Rhodes, or that he's going to get involved in the Austin Theory match. I don't think any of that stuff's happening. I just think he has a relationship with Vince that's a lot like that of Kendall with Logan in the show Succession. If you haven't seen that, I just think he's kind of a fail son, and he's only there to be there. He's not going to do anything. If he does, I will be surprised. I don't need him to do anything. I don't think he will enhance anything. I just think that he has travel plans to be there, and it's being reported that he will. I don't think anybody should be making a big deal about this. Nobody should be making a big deal about him being rehired or something. He was never let go. He was there helping book the Rumble, did not do a good job at all, and was sent home from it. And he's going to be present at WrestleMania. I do not see him being in a match. Speaking of WrestleMania, though, just before it, we'll have Stand and Deliver, and Tommaso Ciampa will be wrestling his last match in NXT that day. He's likely going to be moving to Raw permanently after his last match in NXT. Dolph Ziggler's been doing a lot of work down there. I think they've been developing well in NXT. A lot of people are a little bit confused on what Dolph Ziggler's doing down there. He's not going down there to help ratings. A lot of people think that they're using Ziggler to go down there to help ratings. It's not for that. It's not to help ratings. It's to go down there and be somewhat of a gatekeeper for the Raw roster, for the main roster, and be a litmus test for the up-and-coming performers that have sort of passed every other test. And he'll do his work with Ciampa or Braun Breaker, and then he'll report to management, how it went, how they took moves, how they delivered their moves, and things like that. If they worked a little bit snug, and they basically tell them if they're ready to go up. And that's something that Sean Waltman, X-Pac, used to do back in the Attitude Era a lot for the WWE. He was a measuring stick worker for the WWE. A lot of times they'd bring in a guy, and if he couldn't get past X-Pac, then he couldn't get past anybody. So they'd make a match with X-Pac. X-Pac would get backstage behind the gorilla position. They ask him how it went, and a lot of times that would determine where they would go with a certain performer. It wouldn't be everything or the end-all be-all, but that's a tool they use to help develop talent, is use other reliable talents who they know can get a good match out of anybody, put them in with the younger workers, and see if the younger worker can get a good match with somebody who can basically work with anybody. And Ziggler's been around forever. He's got outstanding skills. He's very safe. He's a good worker, and he's down there helping groom these guys and help work with them and tell management, yes, Tommaso Ciampa's ready to go. He does not need to be down here anymore. Let's go. Braun Breaker, ready to go. Let's go. And I think that's a great role for Ziggler to be in, because he doesn't have a huge hole in the Raw roster that he fills up that we need to see him on there. I don't think we really miss him when he's not on Raw. Like I say, this isn't just a way to have Ziggler go down there and get Ciampa exposed to Raw. It's more of a let these guys work together in NXT, bring them up for a Raw episode or two, give them a match up here. We'll let Ziggler tell us how they worked, how they responded. That'll be part of our evaluation of this, and we'll get guys moving up that way. And it's good to see that, because we all know that we've seen a lot of talent go. Injuries happen. We need more new talent coming up. There's really not that many new guys that have just come up and set the world on fire. And having somebody like this in the men's division that does this, Ziggler's doing it, Rude's doing it with him, but it's more Ziggler doing it. I think it's a great thing. They need someone in the women's division who can go down and scout talent and help develop them and bring them up. We need more women's tag teams. Like I said, if we can get Sasha and Naomi to win the women's tag team belt at WrestleMania, then we have a strong team leading the tag division, which is very weak right now. Plus, Sasha Banks has never even won a match at WrestleMania, and this is her 7th try, so they better win. Then you have two basically headliners, very top women, leading the tag division, and it gives it a lot more credibility. You start bringing up people like Toxic Attraction to feud with them. We need more women on the roster. We need more women together that make sense. I'm tired of seeing just random tag teams like Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley right after Rhea Ripley got dumped by Nikki ASH, who hasn't been on TV in several weeks. I mean, bring up the Toxic Attraction tag team. Let them into the picture. Other tag teams like that. Eventually they'll break off into being single stars if they're good enough, but at least you have a credible division at the time. And they don't have anybody in the women's division going down and working with these women other than Mandy Rose, who's pretty much permanently down there. And we all appreciate what she's done. She's beautiful. She does a great job down there. She did a great job on the main roster. But if she's not going to develop these girls to the point where they're going to come up to the main roster and start making an impact when we need them to, then they need to find another way to do it with the women. Now, we can always go back to Bayley's been injured, Asuka's been injured, this person's been injured. But at the end of the day, people getting injured can't be the excuse. We need to have more people on the roster. When people get injured, other people need to be able to step up and take advantage of that opportunity. And when you have people, not enough people on the roster, then you just have injuries happen, and then you have no women's matches. Nothing happened. Bayley's out. You have no top women to feud with for Becky except Bianca. On the other side, you have to bring in Ronda Rousey to feud with Flair. I mean, I'd rather see these women be built up so we can have some viable feuds at the top that make sense, and other than the two women that have been injured for the entire year. I understand it's difficult for them, but let's get some things going. Again, Ciampa's last match is going to be a stand deliver. Ziggler's been down there helping groom talent. I think he's going to continue to do that. I think it's a good role for him to be in. It's not a ratings thing, and we're going to move on from that in a second. Another thing that I saw today that I thought was pretty funny is people were giving Nikki Bella a hard time because they misquoted her, saying that she thinks that Vader is actually still alive, and she wants to hear his speech and to feel his presence at the WWE Hall of Fame induction. And people have misquoted her and say that she actually thinks he's going to be there. She doesn't think he's going to be there. What she meant was she can't wait to hear the stories of him told by somebody else and maybe feel his spirits there. I don't know. She is not dumb enough to think Vader's still alive. And everybody who's criticizing Nikki Bella for this, leave her alone. It's ridiculous. So Paul Heyman, we got some news on his long-term status. A lot of people are wondering what he's going to do. He actually signed a contract extension in 2021, and that'll keep him in the WWE for the foreseeable future. And I think that's great. I think he's a master on the mic. I think he really enhances Roman Reigns' act. And having him there for a while means that we're going to continue to see this dominant run at the top for Reigns, most likely. Even if that's not the case, Heyman's creative abilities really bring a lot to the table. And, his on-screen presence is great. And I also, for a long-term story tease that I think would be great, not something that I heard of, just something I thought of. If we continue to see Roman Reigns dominate, he wins this match this year. Brock Lesnar goes away for a while. The story here this year is that now we have Roman Reigns in a super heel role. First starting out when early in his reign, he was just destroying people. And then it was getting to the point where people may start cheering him. So to concrete him as a heel, you start having him have the Usos get involved and having him cheat to win and having him do underhanded things that get heat on him and have people not cheer for him. So at this point, throughout this feud, he's played a little bit of the chicken shit heel that always shows ass when Brock Lesnar's around, but talks a big game when he's not. So in this case, Brock's the baby face, and he's all happy with his cowboy stuff and his brawny man outfits. And I think that Brock's going to end up losing this match, and the story's going to be that Reigns was more focused and the more vindictive heel, the more vindictive person, the more vindictive competitor to do whatever it takes to win. And Brock somehow let his guard up somehow, some way, and doesn't feel that he was as tough as he was as a heel. So he'll go away. He'll realize this. He'll come back as a heel. Paul Heyman brings him back with Roman Reigns while Roman Reigns is still a heel. And they have a two-man power trip just like Austin and Triple H did in the 2000s before Triple H tore both of his quads. Then from there, you run the two-man power trip for a little bit, and they're going to eventually want Roman to turn babyface. So you have Heyman and Brock turn on Roman, and now you have Roman as your ultimate babyface. That's just a long-term fantasy booking, but I think it would be pretty cool. A lot of people don't really appreciate what Brock Lesnar brings to the table. He's not just a big beast, big brawny man that can't be stopped and that's booked to win every single match. His merchandise sales, live attendance, subscriptions to social media, and TV viewership have all increased by record rates just by having Brock Lesnar as a full-time performer. I mean, you can look up the numbers. There's live events in certain venues that only sold 5,000 tickets at one time and then sold 8,500 when Brock Lesnar was there. So, I've been to shows recently. They've been complete sellouts, and the impact is definitely felt when Brock is in the building. I'm not even a Brock Lesnar fan, but I appreciate what he does for the WWE as a whole. Now, on Raw the other night, we had a little bit of stuff that didn't add up with the go-home math. We got Becky left laying. Maybe just to show Bianca is tough. Maybe the story here is that Becky is a heel. She'll do whatever she could do whatever it takes to win. Bianca's getting tougher, but she has to prove that she's not a pushover so she can win at WrestleMania. And they have to tell that story convincingly enough so that Bianca can win, and it's not illogical. So maybe that's why she got so aggressive and left Becky laying with her hair cut on Monday. Now, Becky posted something on social media today. She looks great with her hair styled the way it is now. Nothing was done to her wrong. She looks great. But like I say, I don't understand how they can leave Becky laying and now Becky can lose. I think Bianca could now lose this match because of that, because the way that we all know the way wrestling psychology is. On the go-home show, the person left laying is usually the one going in and overcomes at the pay-per-view. So this is a curveball for me. I feel like this is a match that Becky could win, and the feud could continue to go all the way to Backlash. Also, I mentioned earlier in this show, Bayley could win. Bayley could interfere in this and get involved because of her connection to Bianca. But it's more sensical for the business to put her on the SmackDown side and let her take care of Ronda Rousey. Also, didn't add up, Mysterio's beating down the heels. Didn't understand that. First of all, Dominic gets thrown out of the match basically for acting like a clown before the match started, so he didn't even interfere with the match. Then he runs down. They beat the hell out of Miz, do their whole moveset to him, and then Logan Paul just stands there. I think of all the teams that have a tag team or an alliance in WrestleMania that we could see a split in, it's Miz and Logan Paul. I think we may see Logan Paul just abandon Miz in the middle of this match, and we'll see Dominic and Mysterio put on a bunch of frog splashes and double 619s, and then you might even see Logan Paul knock Miz out. And then at Backlash, they might have a program. That's where I think they might go with that one. And then finally, for the go-home heat, we have RK Bro hitting 4 RKOs on the Street Profits after the Street Profits run in and break up what was a pretty good 15-minute main event match. I don't understand, number one, why it was the Street Profits who did this run-in. You had the Street Profits and Alpha Academy backstage. One team is a babyface team. One team is a heel team. Regardless, if last week when the Street Profits attacked RK Bro, if that was a heel turn or just a way to insert them into the match, there's no way that the crowd would be more upset to see Alpha Academy than the Street Profits. They're the heel team. They should do the run-in. They didn't. Street Profits did. So, RK Bro hits 4 RKOs on him and leaves them laying. I think part of this was because of the fact that it looked like Raw was about to go off air with like 2 or 3 minutes left. And Randy Orton was aware of this and said something to the referee. And so they ad-libbed some stuff in the ring afterwards, sent everybody home happy. But to me, it was a lot of stuff where you saw these stories playing out, and the teams or the individuals who we thought were going to logically go into this fighting from beneath and overcoming it, and the story was going to end with them winning, were left someone laying this week instead of what is typical, and having the heels have the advantage going into the pay-per-view. So, the go-home math here doesn't make much sense at all. Maybe we need to redo the whole equation for go-home math, but a lot of it was very confusing. We will see what happens. And there's one last thing I want to get to today before I let you guys go, and that's Johnny Gargano. And we'll talk about him in just a minute. Brad and I also talked about Miz and Mysterio and how that show went off the air and what we think is going to happen. Here's what we were thinking. I think with Miz and Logan Paul against the Mysterios, because they've been showing Logan Paul just watching Miz get his ass kicked, and because we saw Logan Paul not like the way Miz trashed Cleveland, I think in this match, Logan Paul is going to turn on Miz and knock him out or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. It would be kind of funny if, like, Logan Paul, that's probably what's going to happen. I mean, pretty obvious, right? And then you set up like a Miz versus Logan Paul for Backlash or something, right?
Yeah, because I don't see any way they're going to break up the Mysterios right now. And they got to have some sort of something to come out of this. And I think what's going to come out of it is Miz is going to get turned on by his own buddy that he brought in there because he's such an asshole. And then he's going to get a program with him.
Yeah, of course. I agree with you. That's totally the way it's going to be. And Logan Paul doesn't want to be a bad guy, man. He's like this YouTube guy. He wants people liking him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, he doesn't want to be a heel.
No. Like, it was probably cool at the beginning, and then he gets the turn, and everyone cheers him, you know?
Right. And they're probably setting him up. That's a big setup. You'll get a huge pop when he turns. I mean, anybody turning on the Miz will get a huge pop, And
this Russo is such an idiot.
Bro.
He wrote.
Tell you, bro.
So stupid.
So Johnny Gargano, I haven't seen him for a while. Since his last match in NXT, a lot of people have speculated, is he going to AEW? Where's he going? What's he doing? And I think he's just taking a break right now. What he has said is that leaving wrestling every year and then coming back makes people miss you. And makes them care about you more. And if they don't miss you, then they don't care in the first place. And that makes me wonder if they should rotate wrestlers more, or if this happens organically anyway through injuries and things like that. But at the same time, for wrestlers that don't get hurt and are always there, I wonder if subconsciously people get tired of them more than the guys who you see sporadically. So I really thought that this was a good point, because when you think about guys that we really love, guys like The Rock, guys like Stone Cold Steve Austin, guys like Edge, they all had periods in their career, especially The Rock, who kept having to go to Hollywood, wasn't there, then came back, then wasn't there, then came back, then wasn't there, then came back. And that made every time he came back so special. And Stone Cold had so many neck injuries during his career, that there were 9 months, years at a time where you didn't see him and he only did run-ins and things like that. Edge had his career-ending injury and came back. And then on the other hand, you have wrestlers who have always been there, like Triple H, like The Undertaker. Even a guy like Randy Orton's pretty much always been around. And those guys, had they had different other obligations to go to, or injuries, or things that kept them from us seeing them on TV as much as we did, would we have appreciated them any more or differently than we do now? Now, obviously, The Undertaker, he's my favorite wrestler of all time, so nothing's going to change that. And he was used, I wish they would have used him more. Probably couldn't have, because I think he went through about as much as he could. But for certain guys, we want to see them all the time. But just something I always wanted to throw out there and have people think about is, think about your favorite guys and what they bring to the table, and are they guys that if you didn't see him as much, guys, speaking of guys that you're tired of, if you didn't see him as much, would you be tired of them? Would you miss them when they go away? Even Brock Lesnar's this way. He goes away a lot, comes back, goes away. If we've seen Brock Lesnar for the last 22 years, would we really be sick of him? Now, remember what I said before about what Brock does for the business. He's turning, half-filled arenas into sellouts. He's drawing things in astronomical numbers for the WWE. And so these guys like Rock and Austin and Brock, they're not even there half the time, and they're drawing all these numbers when they are there. Would they draw them if they were there all the time? But it just goes to show you their star power. The fact that everybody knows Brock Lesnar, and he can be a part-time performer most of his career and still have that kind of impact on merchandise, on TV, on attendance and things like that. But you need the guys like Triple H and Taker and Orton to hold down the fort and be the gatekeepers along the way. So it's an interesting conversation. You have to have guys that are always there to be reliable, but you also need guys that are great, that become stars, and that do other things that when they come back, people want them so bad, it adds an extra thing. And that's so much better, and it makes it so much more special and so much more organic when it's a wrestler and not a random celebrity or a hired gun or a Ronda Rousey or whatever. Some people call Ronda, they call her Rowdy Ronda Rousey. I call her Ronda Lousy. I think she's completely misfired here with what she's doing now. And that's somebody who has come and gone, and I don't appreciate them when they come back. I'd rather see them not here. But there's other people who are gone, and I miss them right now, like Bayley and like Asuka and people like that. And I miss Bobby Lashley up until WrestleMania Raw, we'll call it, when he came back. And I wonder with that, two different things. Is he still hurt and he needed to wait for his shoulder surgery to happen, so they're putting him in with Omos, so Omos can kind of beat him up pretty bad, and then they can kayfabe that he does need the shoulder surgery that they said he needed before? Is he not hurt? I don't know. I don't know how they get through this match without hurting both of their positions, as I stated on my podcast yesterday. And if you check out my podcast yesterday, you'll find out what I think will happen with that match, but I don't have my official predictions yet. Like I say, I'm going to make those on Saturday because the card's changing every 5 minutes. Different matches could be added. There's a rumor that a U.S. title and or an IC title match could be added somewhere. We don't know anything about that. I don't even know for sure if the KO Austin segment is the main event for Saturday. We don't know a lot of things, so we're going to do our predictions the day of WrestleMania that afternoon. We're probably going to go live for that. Drop that as a podcast, then we'll go live after WrestleMania Night 1, live after WrestleMania Night 2, and live in between the two, as well as live after SmackDown and Raw that bookend the WrestleMania weekend. So we got a lot of content coming up tomorrow. We'll have another update with some news and things like that. I encourage you guys to follow me on Twitter. I'm at Beyond Matt WWE. Matt with 2 T's. There's no D in that. Also, subscribe to the Beyond the Mat podcast with 2 T's on any podcasting platform you use. Look out for the live streams on YouTube as well. Like I say, we'll have our prediction show on Saturday for WrestleMania. I'm excited for it. And we'll keep on bringing in content for you. If you have any questions you want me to read on air, send them to beyondthematwwe@gmail.com. And other than that, you guys have a wonderful night. I'll catch you tomorrow. Take it easy.